I want to show you something today that honestly disturbed me when I first realized it. And there's a good chance you are doing it right now. Not because you're a bad Christian, not because you don't love God. In fact, some of the most committed Christians make this same mistake every single day. They pray, they fast, they read their Bibles, they genuinely want God, yet they unknowingly sabotage their own prayer life. Let me ask you something. Have you ever prayed for something so long that eventually you stopped expecting an answer? You still prayed, you still believed, but somewhere deep inside, disappointment quietly moved into your heart. You didn't quit praying, you just stopped hoping. That's you. Stay with me because at the end of this video, you may discover that the problem was never what you thought it was. The mistake I'm talking about isn't lack of faith. It's not hidden sin. It's not weak prayers. It is something much more subtle. Something so spiritually looking that most Christians never realize it. And here is what's fascinating. The person who exposed this mistake wasn't a pastor, wasn't an apostle. It was Moses. And what he discovers thousands of years ago will explain why so many believers struggle with prayers today. But before we go on, if you are hungry for spiritual growth and messages that challenge the way you think about God, make sure you subscribe to this channel right now and become part of this set-apart community, because what we are about to discover changed the way I pray forever. Now, can I ask you a question? Why do you pray? Not what you pray. Why do you pray? Think carefully. Most people would answer, well, to talk to God. But if we are honest, most of our prayers are actually connected to something we want. A breakthrough, a healing, a provision, direction, protection, miracle. And there's nothing wrong with any of these things. In fact, God invites us to bring our requests to Him. But here's the question I never thought of. What if most Christians don't pray to know God's will? What if they pray hoping God will approve theirs? Pause and think about that, because that's exactly where I found myself some years back. A few years ago, I realized something uncomfortable. I was praying every day. I was consistent, disciplined, faithful, but hidden underneath many of my prayers was a message I wasn't aware of. And that message was, God, I will finally be okay when you give me this. That realization shook me because suddenly I wasn't asking God to become my reward. I was asking Him to become my supplier. That distinction matters. The real purpose of prayer is not to change God's mind. It is to expose yours. Don't miss that, because this is where our discovery begins. Now let me show you something most people never notice. Imagine God appears to you tonight and said, I will give you the breakthrough. I'll answer the prayers. I will solve the problems. I will remove the struggles. I will fulfill the dream. But my presence will not go with you. Would you still take the deal? And wait, don't answer too quickly, because Moses was given something similar. After Israel sinned, God told Moses that the promised land was still available. The blessing remained. The victory remained. The promise remained. But God's presence would not go with them. And here's the part that should shock us. Most Christians today will celebrate. Most people will say, Lord, as long as I get the blessings, that's enough. Moses said something extraordinary. If your presence does not go with us, do not send us. Think about that. Moses was willing to lose the blessing and keep God's presence. Now let me repeat that. Moses was willing to lose the blessing to keep God's presence, because God's presence is the biggest blessing you will have. It gives you everything you need. Many Christians today are willing to lose God's presence to keep the blessings. That's a frightening difference. And here's what makes this story even more powerful. Moses asked God for something most Christians never pray for. And I'm not talking about provisions, nor protections, nor promotions. He said, show me your glory. he wanted God himself, not merely what God would provide. Our mature faith seeks God's presence. Mature faith seeks God's presence. But we're not at the biggest revelation yet. There is something even deeper happening beneath the surface. Let me show you something fascinating from human psychology. Researchers have discovered something called hedonic adaptation. It is a tendency for humans to quickly adapt to things they once desperately wanted. So the new job becomes normal. The new car becomes normal. The new house becomes very normal. The breakthrough becomes normal and stays normal. The very things you once cried over eventually become very ordinary. Think about your own life. How many prayers has God answered that now feel so normal to you and don't matter anymore? The very things you once cried over eventually becomes very ordinary. Think about your own life. How many prayers has God already answered that you barely think about now? Exactly. And suddenly the question emerges, what if God knows something we often forget? What if answered prayers were never meant to be the foundation of your joy? Because answers fade, experiences fade, achievements fade, but relationship remains. That is why some people finally receive the things they prayed years for and still feel empty because they were chasing the answer, not the answer giver, where the answer becomes more precious than God's presence. Prayer stops being worship and starts becoming negotiation. That's powerful and, yes, dangerous, because prayer can slowly become transactional without us realizing it. But here is where things get even deeper. Let me say something that you may find controversial. Satan is not always afraid of Christians' prayer. In some cases, he's relieved. And before you misunderstand me, hear me out. Satan doesn't fear religious activity. He fears intimate relationship with God, because intimacy produces authority. Many believers spend years praying while remaining spiritually shallow, not because they aren't sincere, but because prayer has entirely become focused on outcomes. As long as prayer remains a transaction, spiritual growth remains limited. Think about that. If every prayer begins and ends with your agenda, when does God get room to transform you? This is why some unanswered prayers are actually acts of mercy. I know this may not sound popular, but it's true. Some unanswered prayers expose what we worship, because whatever disappoints you the most often reveals what holds the deepest affection. That realization changed me. Prayer was no longer exposing God's willingness. Prayer was exposing my attachment. The greatest battles in prayer are often not around you. They are within you. Now we are finally approaching the hidden mystic. So here is it. Most Christians enter prayer carrying an agenda. Jesus entered prayer seeking an alignment. That's the difference. That's the mystic. And it's so subtle that most people never notice it. We enter prayer trying to persuade God. Jesus entered prayer ready to surrender to God. Look at Gethsemane. Jesus was honest. He expressed his desire. He said, "Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me." But then he revealed the true heart of prayer. "Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done." Notice something. Jesus wasn't trying to manipulate heaven. He was aligning himself with heaven. Most Christians approach prayer asking, "How can I get God to join my plan?" Jesus approached prayer asking, "How can I join God's plan?" That's the hidden shift. That's the secret. Faith is not trusting that God will do what you want. Faith is trusting God when He does what He wants. And suddenly everything changes, because now prayer isn't primarily about changing circumstances, it's about transformation. Prayer is never wasted if it brings you closer to God, even when it doesn't bring you closer to your desired outcome. So let me challenge you. Tonight, before you ask God for anything, spend 2 minutes wanting nothing. No requests, no lists, no negotiations through emergency prayers. Just His presence, just God. Because the greatest prayer mistake isn't asking God for too much, it is asking God for too little. Many Christians ask God for blessings when God is offering His full self. Many ask God for solution when God is offering intimacy. Many ask for outcomes when God is offering transformation. And here is the thought I want to leave with you. One day, you will stand before God. And in that moment, none of your unanswered prayers will matter. The promotion won't matter. The breakthrough won't matter. The delay won't matter. The only question that will matter is this: did your prayer bring you closer to Him? Because the greatest danger in prayer is not hearing God's no. The greatest danger is getting everything you asked for while remaining a stranger to the one you asked. That's why the kingdom of darkness fears believers who understand this truth, because intimacy with God produces spiritual authority. And that leads perfectly to the next video. If you haven't watched my video titled 3 Prayers That Satan Fears Most, click on it right now after this video, because once you understand what prayer is truly about, the next question becomes, what kind of prayers actually shake the kingdom of darkness? Go watch it now. And if this message challenged you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel right now, and share this video with someone you care about. And thanks for watching. Don't forget, let love guide you, not fear.